Siblings suck. Do not recommend. Avoid if possible. If not possible, watch American Fiction for tips. Jeffrey Wright is a legend, the rest of the cast looked amazing, and the subject seemed ripe for a new take, so I expected to see a smart, funny, and nuanced film about how one man shames the publishing industry and the book-buying public on their racist tendencies. This film had a brilliant take on the subject.
Yeah, you think some bitch-ass college boy can come up with that shit?
But talk about a plot twist. At every turn, I recognized some aspect of my actual lived experience. But I'm not a frustrated writer. I'm an adult daughter, caregiving for my elderly mother. But at one point, I sat up and thought, wait a minute, is this movie about me? There are so many relatable elder care details in the film, but none stronger than the silent showdown between the siblings. The crisis that continually grew and raised the stakes for our main character, Monk, was that his elderly mother, Agnes, needed 24/7 care. He couldn't afford it, and his siblings were either unable or unwilling to help him. So what this film is really about is the American elder care system and how it brought this family to their knees. In American Fiction, Cora Jefferson gives us the expertly written Ellison family, and we see how these siblings interact with each other as they wrestle with elder care in America. Let's discuss.
The dining room table was wobbly as hell.
Oh my God.
When your last book came out, it was like perfect. I'm telling
Take
you.
it back to Logan, please.
Logan cannot help you, Monk.
Oh my God.
Monk's visiting family reluctantly, and his first stop is the clinic where his sister Lisa is a doctor. She's warm and bubbly and makes him feel right at home, but she's not new to this, and she knows he isn't staying very long. She wastes no time in dishing the goods on their mother. She starts with a doozy. Agnes keeps forgetting that Lisa is divorced. Next, Lisa explains that financially, due to said divorce, she can't just pay for nursing care by herself, and their brother Cliff can't help due to his really messy divorce. Finally, Lisa reveals that Agnes has taken out a reverse mortgage on her primary residence. This is key, because it tells the truth about Agnes. Although she might appear to be well off, in reality, she's broke. While Monk learns about Agnes, we learn about Lisa. She's unhappy at work, watching her mother decline, still finding reminders of their dad's affairs, and she's tired of being in charge while her brothers play dumb. She's stressed, and she even took up smoking again.
So she's the one that keeps in touch with everybody. I'm sure she talks to Cliff all the time. She calls Monk to see how he's doing. So she's kind of like the one that explains what's going on within the family.
Lisa is definitely the glue, holding everything together. And she's also the mediator, tiptoeing around old family dramas and making sure nobody's stepping on anyone's toes. Unfortunately, most people don't see this as real work. They think caring for family is just what you do, no big deal. But it is a big deal. Lisa's situation highlights the unseen burden of caregiving, emotional labor. Lisa is the de facto caregiver, and her story is a case study in the emotional labor of caregiving. Often a daughter or the child living closest to the aging parents, the de facto caregiver steps into the role of primary caregiver, sometimes by default, rather than a formal decision. All of this comes to a head when suddenly, while at lunch with Monk, Lisa suffers a heart attack and dies. Outwardly, Lisa looked amazing. She was joyous and fun to be around, so no one would suspect how difficult it was for her. Her brothers simply assumed, gratefully, that everything was under control. And it was, but at what cost? Continuous caregiving and emotional labor can lead to chronic stress and burnout. Translation: Lisa kept smiling so that everyone around her felt good, but inside she was suffering, to the point of causing herself harm. Lisa may have felt overwhelmed and exhausted, but she continued to push through, clearly neglecting her own well-being in the process.
Stick around and help with Mother?
I gotta get home.
It's 8 a.m.
I'm not flying the fucking plane, Mom.
We meet Cliff at Lisa's funeral. He's a plastic surgeon in Tucson, divorced, and his kids hate him. In his own words, his wife found him in bed with a man and took him for everything. And being a newly out gay man at this stage of life is challenging. Switching gears, Monk checks in on the dad info. Did he know about the affairs? Yes. And you didn't because you idolized Dad. Enemies see each other better than friends. Upstairs, Agnes declines, and Monk is clearly shaken, but Cliff's response is pretty much a shoulder shrug. When Monk asks for guidance or money for help, Cliff avoids any involvement, whether it's a conversation with her doctor or cash. Instead, he suggests firing their longtime housekeeper, Lorraine. Fast forward a bit, and Monk's yet again trying to get some help from Cliff, this time outlining the specific cost of the best facilities near them. Cliff questions why he's looking for the best when she wasn't the best mother. Monk argues that now isn't the time to rehash old family drama, but Cliff hits back, saying that that's easy for you to say because you had it easy and I didn't. At this point, it would be easy to dismiss Cliff as being the asshole sibling, but there's way more at play here. Cliff displays many traits of the wounded child sibling type. The wounded child is an adult that struggles with past emotional wounds that affect their ability to participate fully in family matters, particularly in the context of caring for an aging parent. This often shows up in their behavior and relationships in adulthood. In his own way, each of these interactions is Cliff's attempt to be validated. Cliff's experience of their parents was very damaging for him, and he wants to at least be acknowledged before he pays for Agnes's care. This is a deeply emotional response rooted in a lifetime of feeling invisible within his own family. And unfortunately for Cliff, he cares too much about his family to just stay away from them. Cliff comes back to town in true Cliff form, bringing a little chaos Monk's way, but Monk and his girlfriend Coraline still take Cliff to see Agnes. Cliff's impressed, obnoxiously curious, and most likely disappointed that Monk found a way to get her into an expensive facility without his help. When they see Agnes, they see that she is experiencing an even further decline. Shockingly, Cliff shares a sweet moment with her. They dance to an old song that brings Agnes back to herself, if only for a moment. But the sweetness is short-lived when she makes a derogatory comment about his sexuality. And there it is, the deep, underlying rift in their relationship. We can only assume that Cliff's experience growing up as Agnes's closeted gay son was filled with moments like this. So his parting words for Coraline as he leaves town again are, "His family will break your heart."
With Cliff, it's the elephant in the room. Family, the mother and father, doesn't want to deal with having a son that may be gay. He hasn't been able to have his truth. She's still in denial. It would have been nice if she had just let it go and let him be who he was.
Cliff's experience shows that certain breaks in relationships, especially those involving identity and acceptance, can be deeply wounding and just plain difficult to overcome.
I don't decide what sections the books go in, and no one here does. That's how chain stores work.
Right. Ned, you don't make the rules.
I'm just gonna put them back after you leave.
Don't you dare, Ned. Do not you dare.
Monk is a self-absorbed, self-important curmudgeon. He couldn't be any more disconnected from his family and feels like it's his rite of passage as a writer to be tormented by them.
You look fat.
Okay.
Monk is the one that I find is the distant one in the family. He lives in his own intellectual world. He was always very serious. He wasn't the fun one. And Monk was always the favorite child. Father favored him because he was on that intellectual kind of plane that the father was on. But he was never around the family that much.
But Monk is currently experiencing a downward spiral. He's not taking care of himself physically, he's having difficulty sleeping, and one of his colleagues even saw him crying in his car. On top of that, his employer put him on a mandatory leave of absence, and he can't get his latest book published. Life is not good, and then it gets worse. After Lisa dies and he can't get Cliff's help, Monk assumes full responsibility for his mother's care, most likely as a response to seeing her in a vulnerable state. This is completely understandable. When there's a person that looms larger than life for you, it can be extremely jarring to see them in a position of weakness and need. And then as their reliance on you grows, it is difficult to remove yourself from their world. We are witnessing Monk's evolution into a caregiver in real time. First, it's just a visit with her doctor. Then it's researching what Medicare or Medicaid will or will not cover and why, which turns into managing her finances, which turns into being around all of the time to see the decline firsthand. It is total consumption. Monk is most clearly the reluctant caregiver sibling type. Thrust into the role of caregiver unexpectedly, dealing with the complex and emotional toll of caring for an aging parent, while also navigating their personal and professional life. They are reluctant not out of indifference, but due to the sudden, overwhelming nature of the situation. In one of Agnes's scarier moments, Monk found her walking dangerously close to the shore. That's when he decided it was time to place her into a facility. But there was a waiting list, so he and Lorraine were on watch duty until move-in day. Soon after, his agent Arthur sets him up with an in-person meeting with film producer Wiley. Monk brings Agnes into Arthur's office while he meets with Wiley across the street. This was his first in-person act as his persona, Stagger Lee. If his performance was believable enough, he would secure millions of dollars in film rights. The stakes were high. The meeting was going well until Monk started to hear sirens. Then the ambulance stopped right in front of Arthur's office building. Monk bolted from the meeting and ran up the stairs in a panic, calling out for his mother. Thankfully, Agnes was fine. Monk's story is a prime example of how caregiver stress can sneak up on you, especially when you're juggling other huge responsibilities. His situation shows how the demands of caring for an elderly parent can slowly grow and start to take over every part of your life. It's not just the physical tasks of caring for someone. It's the mental and emotional weight of being pulled in different directions and the strain that it puts on you. Monk finds himself discovering just how deeply his priorities have shifted. So what's the sibling showdown? You know, on paper, it looked like these three siblings would be able to just easily cover the costs of elder care. But elder care in America is expensive, just a shitty situation. Silently, Lisa was begging for help. Silently, Cliff was demanding to be acknowledged and validated. Loudly, Monk was crying out for help, but it was too late. What we can learn from these siblings is that communication is key, obviously. There's so much going on underneath the surface that elder care just kind of like brings it all to the forefront and forces you to sort of deal with it whether you want to or not. I don't think Lisa intended to stress herself out into a heart attack. I don't think that Cliff intended to ice Monk out and leave him hanging dry, but his emotional response was so strong he couldn't help it. Monk, being Monk as he was before he was a caregiver, he laid the road for the indifference and the response that he got. Just seeing these pretend siblings have these conversations that are so validating for a caregiver, and for me, I'll just say it's for me. It's so validating for me to see other people discuss what's going on in my head. Watching this, I felt incredibly seen. I'm glad to see it up on the big screen. I think more people need to see this and more people need to discuss it. See you in the next video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.